Hi guys, how are you doing? I don't know why I asked that because you can't answer. I've not got used to this blog thing and it's day 83. So you'd think it's not going to get any better, basically. So yeah, it's day 83 of our lockdown, June the 11th. And yeah, today was a day that I've mentioned a few times over the last week because today was the day of the Newport Black Lives Matter march. Thankfully, it was very well attended despite quite crap weather and utterly peaceful, no dodgy incidents, nobody letting us side down or giving us all a bad name or anything. I did not go, but I watched the live stream and twice cried. It's becoming quite a common thing. It's just like how many times I cry per day, which makes it sound like you're giving me a terrible time, and he's not at all.
Ellie said that. We were in conversation in like a group on Facebook Messenger earlier, and Ellie said, "Oh, I've cried twice today," and then she was like, "Oh, it wasn't Chris." And I don't think that anyone's go-to assumption that knows me.
I thought that would be funny,
me.
Yeah. Now I think that they might think that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's funny.
If it's more like you think
it wasn't Chris.
You think she does protest too much, and I fucking told you not to tell people that.
Yeah, the thing is, like, anybody who knows you will not find it plausible that you'd be sort of be mistreating me behind closed doors, so I find the idea of suggesting it somewhat funny.
Oh.
But yeah, if anything, it would be the other way round. People should look after your welfare.
I mean, I don't think that's true. I feel very safe and loved, but I'm not against people doing more to look out for my welfare. Just, anytime, that's always a positive, right?
People looking after
looking after me.
Out
Send me care packages.
Yeah, I'll take some care packages. Yeah. Actually, I can't complain because I've had quite a few care packages through. I've had a few early birthday presents through that have been very good and not opened.
And one of them wasn't even wrapped, was it? So you know exactly what it is.
I know exactly what it is.
And it's yummy looking.
I have to confess, because that was Joe actually sent several presents, and I've basically I drank one of them because it was wine and I had no wine in the house, so what was I to do? And the other was a brilliant colouring book, which is the Swearing Cats one, which I've mentioned. And I needed to do some colouring. As I've mentioned, sort of, it's quite good for calming me down and distracting my brain when it's a bit anxious. And I thought, rather than carry on with the book that I was already working on, I want some sweary cats. Although it was technically a birthday present, I had at it. But the other thing that's left is some lovely vegan chocolate truffles, and they look amazing. And they've been calling to me for probably about a month now from the mantelpiece. And I'm going to eat them. I'm going to eat them so hard.
I think it's incredible that you've managed to leave those. I think those truffles being there.
Has it been causing you some distress?
I think I have been out and bought more chocolate as a consequence than I would have done.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
No, it's fine.
I'm still not giving it to you.
No, I don't expect you to. They're your vegan treats, and I can eat all sorts of chocolate. Chocolate for me is very readily, easily available.
I will share them with you when I've opened them, but you're not having them before my birthday.
No, but I don't. I would love to have one to try. That'd be lovely. But even if you wanted to have them all to yourself, I wouldn't mind because. You've been vegan, it's hard for you to get. You can't just go down to the corner shop and get some nice chocolate. But having them in the living room where I can see them, I think has.
Just be like, oh, the chocolate.
It's not that I want Ellie's chocolate. It just reminds me that chocolate is a thing in the world, and
there's like the simple pleasures right now because we're all of the sort of normal things that you do to pick yourself up. Most all of them are off the cards. So yeah, food has replaced quite a lot of those. Food and booze for me. I've always been quite a comfortable drinker, but I definitely drink more in lockdown than I did before, for sure. Because there'd be if I knew I had work the next day, for example, I wouldn't go heavy on the booze or anything. Whereas now it's just like sod it, drink the bottle, down it. And I'm not giving myself grief over it either. I am fat as butter. And I'm loving life.
Yeah, I've definitely put on some weight recently. I was doing quite well, I think, early on, doing lots of varied cooking, and now my cooking, lately, I feel like my cooking has just become, what can I use as a conduit to get cheese into my body?
Yeah.
That's what's happened
Yeah,
lately.
you've been having some quite cheese and chorizo based
Cheese
stuff,
and chorizo.
which is a good
And
combination.
I've got a recipe that I haven't tried yet for cheese and chorizo dumplings.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's probably a good thing I won't eat those because that sounds devilish, but very good.
I'm looking forward to that, guys.
Yes.
And that's when I'm in the mood for some proper cooking because I've just been doing like nachos the last couple of days. And that's,
Yeah, I've been doing quite
that's
lazy
just
cooking.
Put some cheese on some crisps.
Just burger,
and melt it.
grill, bread.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing mainly.
So, I need to get back on the cooking, but you get into habits, don't you? Sometimes with cooking, and then you sort of forget what your options are in a way.
Well, I've got terrible because obviously I lived alone for a long time, for probably better part of 5 years before you moved in, and I used to cook a lot, and I'm a decent cook, but I don't particularly enjoy cooking. But I don't cook at all ever anymore because you're such a good cook and you enjoy it that I'm just like, yeah. Cook me some food. Lovely. I'm not going to argue with that. Yeah, have at it. Wouldn't want to deny you the pleasure. But yeah, because I can cook. I'm a decent cook, but I just don't have that. Like, I don't particularly. I like the eating of the food, but the cooking of the food I find arduous. But yeah, it's not because I can't do it. I'm a decent cook. But yeah, just. No particular, I derive very little pleasure from it. It just all feels like a faff. I'm like, I just want it to be ready and edible. But yeah, it is kind of different if you're sort of cooking for a bunch of people or something, for like a dinner party or something, and you're really trying to sort of do something a bit fancy. But quite often, it's like, I don't really think about cooking until I'm already hungry, and then I'm like, okay, what can I get in me in the next 20 minutes, basically.
And then after that, have something to eat.
Hey, I know what you did there. So yes, that's thrown me a little bit there.
All right, shall I take over?
Yeah.
Yesterday, it was pretty much a single issue vlog, wasn't it?
Yes.
We were talking a lot about comedy.
Yeah, we talked about that in more depth than I anticipated,
yeah.
but actually, even despite being myself quite tiddly, I think on rewatching it, it was an interest. Like, we sort of went into it in quite good depth, but I think it was all fairly well thought out. And
maybe it shouldn't be for us to say, but I don't think that we kind of rambled or waffled. I think there was just a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And it was an issue. Obviously, Black Lives Matter is very important, and comedy is an issue that's very close to my heart, particularly. So we spent a lot of time on that, and I just wanted to kind of pick up on it a bit because I've been seeing, a lot of the debate that's been kind of ongoing today on social media and things, and some people being very reasonable, some people being a bit reactionary, and some of that I understand, right? Because it's very easy to say our Prime Minister is a racist and he shouldn't be in office, right? That's easy.
It's very easy to say that.
That's easy. He's got a history of saying and doing racist things, and he should be stopped. He should be torn down and thrown into the Bristol Channel. Very easy to say that. But when people come
Get him in the harbour.
Kind of, when people come after art and entertainment and things that you love and enjoy and have affection for, it's harder, you go, and you feel like almost like you're being attacked because something you like is being attacked.
Yeah.
And I get that.
And then it's very easy to get quite defensive then, because it feels like it's a criticism and you don't want it to be true. Well, that's what all of this is. It boils down to, though. I think, like, people getting, like, in the comment section on the internet particularly, it's a lot of people being very defensive. And there's not a lot of open and useful communication actually going on there, because if you go in, like, you can't pussyfoot around these things and be too fluffy. Like, they're quite big issues and they're very emotive issues. But if you go in and go straight for the jugular on someone whose views you don't agree with, if you go in hard and rude, chances are that person is not going to be receptive to anything you have to say on principle, and vice versa, because that would be the same with me. If I sort of take issue with something racist or sexist that someone has seen, and I'll go in and sort of give them a bollocking, it's not really much of a surprise if they then don't immediately go, oh, thank you, you've helped me see the error of my ways. And it's the keyboard warrior thing. It's very easy to go much harder and much ruder than you would if you were in a room with someone.
And of course,
and
with
I'm
us being in
trying.
lockdown, there's
Yeah, it's
a lot of
even.
keyboard warriors because we can't get face to face
Yeah.
and have a chat with people a lot of the
And
time.
I'm trying to sort of remind myself of that at the moment, because today's march in Newport was a really lovely thing to behold, and there were some brilliant speakers, and some very thought-provoking and inspirational stuff was brought up. And one of the main things that I'm taking away from this march, but also quite a lot of stuff I'm seeing on social media, is that we do need to be vocal, and we do need to sort of come at it from a point of trying to educate people who maybe are ignorant to certain issues. And there's no shame in being ignorant to something. If you just don't know something, you just don't know it. But if you go in and have a go at someone for not knowing something, or for not realizing maybe how something's coming across, and you go in too hard, they're gonna double down. And if anything, that's gonna sort of radicalize them and make them seek out other people that agree with them and be more insular. And so it's very difficult sometimes when someone's just being an absolute douche canoe. It's quite hard to sort of be like, okay, I see where you're coming from, but ultimately it is probably more helpful if you can keep your cool. So I was quite pleased. I was quite pleased with myself today. Yeah, like a lot
Borderline smug.
A lot of white people who have been like on the right side of this are probably feeling quite pleased with themselves at the moment. And I don't want to be that person, but there was, as I say, the march was happening today, and sort of I think in the aftermath of mainly the Bristol statue coming down, but also there has been some graffitiing of sort of posters and landmarks and things. There was a group of people. From their faces in the photo, they were all white faces, and very few of them were wearing masks, of the ones that were photographed. Turned up to Newport Cenotaph to protect the cenotaph during the march. And there was no need for that. First of all, the march did not go anywhere near the cenotaph. But also, I don't think anybody had any intentions of defacing a war memorial. The reason the Bristol statue got taken down was because it essentially was glorifying someone who profited from slavery. People who've died in the war, and all the wars, have come from every faith and background and racial sort of demographic anyway. So it would be disrespectful and insulting to your own ancestors if you were sort of going to make a race point about it. And it was a peaceful protest. I'm glad it stayed peaceful. Nothing kicked off anywhere. But I felt the fact that people were protecting the cenotaph, there's an implied criticism and there's an implied insult being made there, that those sorts of people who are protesting are the sort of people that might deface a war memorial, which those two things don't make sense in my head. So this story was doing the rounds on the web feed of a local newspaper, and a bunch of people sort of going, good on them, well done, these people have got no respect. And I was just like, nothing happened. And so I pointed at it and I just sort of said, nobody had any intentions of defacing a war memorial. It was a peaceful protest that was entirely successful, and I'm very proud today to say that I'm from Newport, because Newport really did a great job. The march was really well attended, really well thought through, well organised, and the speakers were brilliant, and the turnout was very heartening. It was lovely. And I think the consensus would have been amongst marchers that if anyone had done something shitty like that, we the marchers, I was there in spirit, as I say, wasn't there in it, but we would have been outraged with anyone who would behave that way, because it sort of it fights the other side's corner. It makes you the bad guy, which is the whole thing that we're fighting against. So I thought people protecting it was a bit redundant and insulting, and I said so. And then the crazies come out of the woodwork, as you'd expect. And one chap piped up with photos, which I did with literally about 30-second Google image search, discovered were doctored. But somebody is basically saying that the Newport cenotaph had been defaced, and with a picture of a cenotaph. Turns out the picture of a cenotaph they were showing is in Whitehall in London, which was defaced several days after the Black Lives Matter protests. And I suspect it was done overnight. Nobody knows who did it. I suspect that's done to whip up a bit of anti-Black Lives, because it was defaced with BLM on it. I suspect that's to whip up anti-BLM rhetoric, probably done by the far right. But I don't know that. That's just supposition. But basically, it didn't happen during the riots. Rioters did not do that. So all it takes is a quick fact check. But kept my cool. And actually, one of the ladies who was going in quite strong with this actually sort of backed down and said, I didn't realise, and I sort of said, that's cool, we can all make mistakes, but maybe be a bit more aware of what these things are before you share them, because she just assumed it was true. And it was Newport, and she used it to sort of say, this is typical of Newport people, and I was like, well, that's a bit unfair. But yeah, it was sort of, ultimately, you do get, obviously there's some people that there's absolutely no arguing with, and there's no point arguing with, because they're just absolutely 100% fervently bigoted.
And to be clear, some people from Newport are awful. But a lot of them are lovely.
Most of them, I'd say, are good, lovely people, and I will not have anti-Newport rhetoric. Thank you.
But
shut up, Bedford. But yeah, it's sort of like the comment section on the internet is a crazy place to be right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was saying. I was seeing people today talking about, this issue with the comedies and things being taken down off streaming services, and I saw people saying, well, what about that sketch going for in English from Goodness Gracious Me? Where the Indian people go for an English
sketch.
and,
I love
and
that
they're
sketch.
going, well, that's racist, and people don't have a problem with that, and everyone can have a laugh at the racism. And it's no, that's not. What that is a kind of brilliant social satire that kind of subverts and highlights racism. It's not racist. And if you can, send me a message explaining to me the brilliant social satire of Matt Lucas yellowing up to play Ting Tong the Thai Bride on Little Britain, then you go for your life. But I'll believe it when I see it. It's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And also the other one that I saw today is people going, well, what about? Does this mean they're going to be taking away Dam Busters? Because in Dam Busters, the main guy, the hero of the film, he has a dog.
Yes.
And the name of the dog is the N-word.
Yes.
Right.
I actually went to the Dam Busters Museum a few years ago, and it's up in the Peak District.
Yeah.
It's basically by a big lake that they practiced on before they went off and busted some dams. But yeah, they had the collar of the dog there with the tag, but the tag turned upside down, but in a glass cabinet, and if you looked underneath you could see what it was. But I think that was their way of sort of documenting it, but being sensitive about it. So you could see it, but you didn't have to see it if you and I think like that is accurate. That is what that dog was called. We don't need to sort of pretend that didn't happen.
I think,
but we don't have to normalise it and say, well, it was okay then, so it's okay now. That's not how that works.
I think a couple of things, because actually I think what's happening in a lot of places, they've just edited the movie so that isn't mentioned. And it's like, I think, well, first of all, I think there's no real need for that name to be in there. That's not a thing that needs to be defended or claimed back. Is it? That's it. It's not intrinsic to the story of the Dam Busters that there's a dog with that name.
They couldn't have done it without the dog being called that.
That was the real life name of the actual dog. But, when people make films based on true events, details and things are changed all the time.
Yeah.
Like several characters might be conflated into one representative figure.
To get
things
the
like
point
that.
across without having to sort of complicate.
If it was like they didn't have to, like it's not really necessary to keep. They could have just changed the name of the dog and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Right? But having said that, that was a film made over half a century ago, depicting true events from even further back. In a time where society wasn't as integrated and diverse and understanding and progressive as as we like to think it is now, and there is a world of, and that's not to defend it or say that that should be in there, but I do think it's worth saying there's a world of difference between that and two comedians in this century who very much should have known better.
Yeah. I think, having like we probably covered lots of it yesterday and don't need to sort of cover
I
the
just
same
wanted
ground.
to kind of mention those two things because I was seeing
Yeah,
it
no,
happen.
I think because absolutely, because I hadn't seen, I checked afterwards because I was like, well, I did watch series 1 and I don't recall these characters, and they didn't. They appeared in series 2 and 3. Which I apparently just didn't watch.
I sort of think if you
but
just
like
got rid of
even
series...
from just the stills, you can sort of just see them and go, which I think some people must have done at the time. I refuse to believe everybody was just
honestly,
like, oh, this is fine.
That's how I felt at the time, and I'm not saying that as like virtue signalling or anything, but just this, as I said it yesterday, the idea, this messaging that kind of times have changed. No, this wasn't cool.
It wasn't cool then.
Like 18 years ago or whenever it started. And I think if they just got rid of series 2 and 3 of Little Britain, and just kept the first series and that was all you could see,
I think that would have been justified.
I think that would be very flattering. You know, that would actually serve Little Britain very well in retrospect, because that was the only series with any kind of charm or humour in it, to be honest.
Yeah. I think there is a maybe an element of some babies being thrown out with the bathwater with some characters, and some like to perhaps say I'll use the Mighty Boosh as an example mainly because I love it, but to get rid of all of it for maybe 1 or 2 episodes which have some dodgy ground, like, and it's also important to say, like I think we said it yesterday, but having done something that can be perceived as racist does not necessarily mean you are an out and out racist. I'm sure all of us have said or done or thought things that ultimately, if you look at them closely, would be racist, whether or not your intentions were noble or not. That on reflection you could go, oh, and actually really it comes down to your intentions and your character, and if you mean well and you apologise when you fuck up, I think that speaks volumes. I think it's interesting that David Walliams has been quiet, but Matt Lucas's apology looks and feels quite heartfelt, and I think that's genuine, and I feel for him actually. Cause
he seems like quite a thoughtful, intelligent, well-meaning guy actually. From everything I've heard in interviews in the past and things, and I actually think he seems like quite likable. But
for sure.
Another thing that I want to talk about today is we talked on the vlog a few days ago. We were talking about J.K. Rowling.
Yes.
Because she came out with some transphobic comments on Twitter.
Apparently, I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but just in response to the backlash for those tweets, she's written an essay, and she's doubled down.
Yes.
Even further.
She has. Well, a point that I made at the time is that kind of it's very easy to kind of go on Twitter and see one tweet from her and kind of go, and then see all the people saying, no, this is really transphobic, and see that and sort of go, oh, I don't know,
they seem to be being a bit harsh
they
to
seem
her,
like they're
maybe
maybe
oversensitive.
That seems reasonable, or at worst misguided, like, and maybe they're just kind of jumping on it, and then but you kind of have to look down the feed and go, no, this isn't a one-off though, this is like a pattern of behaviour where she says these kind of borderline things and that many borderline things. But the thing is, which I think is still true, like if you kind of can see a pattern of behaviour, that's probably not helpful, but there's more to it than that. I kind of didn't know all the details and things, and a friend of mine, Jesse Johnson, shared an article on Facebook talking about how this very issue, how specifically J.K. Rowling, but she's not the only one, but someone who's transphobic can kind of say a thing that sounds incredibly reasonable, and you know, well, why is everyone kicking off? But then you look into the actual facts and the details of what she's talking about, and you go,
a bit more insidious, and
no,
it's a bit cleverer than that. And
the thing is awful, and she's reframing it as by omitting facts or just kind of taking a particular angle on it that makes it sound reasonable, but actually it's awful when you know the details. And I shared that on my Facebook as well. We'll share it on the vlog here. I read it. I thought it was really good. It was only after I'd read it and shared it and sort of put a thing saying how great an article I thought it was, that I realised that my friend Jessie hadn't just shared the article; she'd actually written it herself. And it's incredibly well written, honestly.
I will
so we'll
share
put
it.
the
I will
link
get
in
the
it,
link and share
and
it
you
in the
should
blue.
read it because I think it's an important issue, and I think, it's really depressing.
I think,
like, as you know, on the one hand, you see something like the Mighty Boosh being taken away, and you go, like, oh, that probably was a bit misjudged if they blacked out for a character, or, and do we have to lose it all though? Can we lose the episode? But it's a shame, and that there's that thing. But at least you don't get kind of Noel Fielding and Julian Barrett coming out in the press going, no, we were right, and we'd black up again.
We would do it again, I tell you.
Great. We're all for it, and J.K. Rowling, someone who...
You wouldn't get the Bake Off gig again if you did that, would you?
No, I mean, but, I'd like to think he's not just it's not just a careerist thing, but...
No, I love him.
But he... Not sure about this. He kissed you on a DVD. I'm not into this at all.
Do you want to watch it?
No. I think they should take it off Netflix. But I've lost my way. But J.K. Rowling, it's such a big part of everyone's childhood, those books, and hopefully it's a thing. I mean, you look back at kind of, there's lots of people in the past who have created great art, and then they've held abhorrent views, and the art kind of outlives them. And I sort of, those books are so beloved. I don't know what way that's going to go. I've never read them myself. I always sort of thought I'd save them and read to my children.
I will still read Harry Potter to my children, but I will certainly. I think I'll go with the canon that was suggested by someone, that just those books just magically appeared and we don't know who wrote them. I like that.
Yeah, just strip the name from them. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Let's just have it. Like, you've made your millions, bugger off.
Yeah,
but the thing
after
that
a while,
I find,
they're going to fall. Eventually, they fall out of copyright, right?
Yeah,
make them public
I think
domain.
that takes quite a long time.
About 100 years, but
something
still.
like that. The thing that I find extraordinary, really, with any of these things is you would think, particularly if you're sort of a lefty liberal type, that if you hold an opinion and you go out to the world with your opinion, and then huge representation from a marginalized group, whichever group that is, whether that's due to race or sexual orientation or gender identity or whatever it is, when loads of people from a marginalized group take issue with your views, and you are someone who is not affected by that. So for her, in her instance, just the fact that she's cisgender female, you'd think, well, okay, I don't see anything wrong with these views, but I will defer to the people who are saying that this is offensive to them as a marginalised group. You'd feel horrified that you were essentially adding to making the lives and sort of culture surrounding any marginalised group worse. So even okay, right, you think this then, J.K. Rowling, and that is your right. You can think whatever you think, but knowing that it is causing real distress to large groups of people who are marginalised, maybe you'd think, well, okay, I'll just keep those views to myself then. Compromise, just shut up. I would settle for that. You can think whatever you think. That is everybody's right to have whatever opinion and whatever beliefs that they want to. I will defend your right to that.
But as your thoughts
you don't
are
have to.
Thoughtful and ignorant, keep them to yourself.
There was a lovely tweet that
I said thoughtful and ignorant. I meant
thoughtless.
Thoughtless and ignorant, hurtful and ignorant.
Hurtful, yes. Mm-hmm. There was a lovely tweet that I saw that really boiled down the idiocy of J.K. Rowling's whole viewpoint on this, which is taken from her own work. Anyone who is a Potterhead, of which I am, will remember that there is a scene in which Hermione takes a polyjuice potion, I believe, in order to take over the body of Harry Potter. In order to do some stuff as him. In fact, all of them do. A bunch of them at the end all take this so that they've got loads of decoy Harrys. So they're all Harry, and they're in Harry's body. It is Harry because Hermione mentions when putting on the glasses, oh God, Harry, your eyesight's terrible. So it's not, they don't look like Harry, they're in his body with all of his body. I think she's about 17. It's the last one of the last 2 books. I'm not sure
Do
if
you
it's in the first part or the second
Do you
part.
think she took some time out during this adventure to just have a go on the bits?
I think they were sort of saving the world at the time, so they probably didn't have time. But the writing that she uses in that piece is Hermione says XYZ, she da da da. She's in a male body. She's Hermione. You're calling her she because you're accepting that the character, the mind of a person, is a different thing to the body in which they inhabit. If you can do that in your own work, why can't you do that in reality? Like, that's not magic, that's reality. Some people, gender identity does not necessarily match their biological sex. To call them wrong on who they believe themselves to be is incredibly arrogant and really unkind. Like, just stay the fuck out of other people's business. Their gender identity and what's going on with their genitalia is not really anybody's business. So just like, for example, one of the things that her argument is people who menstruate are women, so call them that. Well, what about women who don't menstruate? There are lots of women who don't menstruate. Postmenopausal women don't menstruate. Does that mean they're no longer women? Fuck off. People with fertility issues or just voluntarily don't menstruate through birth control. They're still women. Like, boiling us down to things our bodies can or cannot do based on our genitalia basically is taking away from our womanhood. It's taking away from men's manhood to just say, you are purely based on what your cock and balls can do. Like, it's reducing us down to breeding stock. And
very limited.
And we're more than that. And I just think it's narrow-minded, unkind,
Tried to write a novel with my cock and balls once.
How did that go?
Got nowhere.
No, might be even worse than your actual handwriting, which is fairly shocking.
Made quite a mess of the keyboard.
Oh God. But yeah, so like we'll leave that there really because we've gone over again. But
say one thing as well, because when transphobes kind of go, oh, either you're a man or a woman, and what you're born as is the thing. What they forget and discount is like 1 in 60 people is intersex, which is like higher than
you will know people who are intersex.
You realise, and it's as many people as there are redheads.
Oh really?
Oh,
that's interesting.
1 in 60, and often they won't even know it themselves.
No.
Like because being intersex isn't necessarily having both genitals or whatever, and often it isn't even necessarily to do with your genital. Like it might be about you might have like ovarian tissue or something.
It'll be on the X/Y chromosome, and you'll have variants on there that may not be visible in. People tend to maybe find out about them when they look into their own fertility and things like that. You wouldn't necessarily know. You could go your whole life not knowing, but it's still valid, and you still have traits from both.
And like. Don't get me wrong, like intersex and transgender are not one and the same thing at all. I don't mean to necessarily conflate the two.
But people using science to argue against it.
Well, you're either a man or you're a woman, and there's these 2 boxes that everyone is in, and it's your genitals you're born with. It's just not.
It's just not true. It doesn't hold up to the science.
You know, and when people trying to go, they try and use science to kind of back up their kind of transphobic arguments, but the science just doesn't.
The science community does not back it up.
Exactly.
Basically, there's a lot more reading that you can do out there from various walks of science. So not just social sciences and psychological sciences, but biological sciences will say that there is a spectrum. There's a lot of different variants on the X and Y chromosome, which are the ones that are to do with your physical sex. Before we finish tonight, just because it happened tonight, so I want to mention it, I was a guest on Forza Crowd today.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a dropout in one of the guests, so I got bumped up to actual guest.
This is the panel show Forza Crowd that I do every week.
So every Thursday it goes out. I will share the link to it.
Excuse me.
I will say, I really enjoyed doing it, but crikey, I was nervous, much more nervous than I anticipated being. But I did have that sort of sense when it was over of, I'm glad I did that. So I guess performance anxiety, really, like that kind of, I've done it. But I need to, like, if that's going to become a habit, because we've started doing like comedy sketches and stuff together, I feel like I need to have a disclaimer that's just like, Ellie Daniel, not a comedian, because I'm not, and the pressure to be funny with other people who are naturally very funny is not fun.
I think she was great on it. And
Well, you
I
would
think
say
you should check it out.
Do check it out though. See what you thought. It was fun to do, and I won't be on it next week because we lost. Spoiler alert. But do carry on watching it anyway. I dare say at some point I might get roped back in at some point, because the reason I was roped in was sort of a last minute change. One of the guests couldn't make it. So it is kind of, now that I've done it, at least I can be on hand. Although, it's a bit scary. But yeah, it was fun. I was glad I did it. So
Yes.
Thanks for asking me. Again,
welcome.
by
Good to have
default, I've been involved in so much of your comedy work, I think, purely by luck of proximity.
Yes.
So it's become a string to my bow that I did not seek out.
I think.
But now that I've got it, I'm happy with it.
I think it's only fair. All the comedy that I've involved you in, you now give me a third share in the escape room business.
I disagree.
Ah, boo.
I will hire you and pay you as an employee. How's that?
I don't like that.
Well, I don't think David, my other business partner and brother, would be too keen with me just giving away chunks of the business.
I'd be a silent partner.
You would be a silent partner.
Stay at home. I'd continue to stay at home and let you run it.
You're going to invest in it? I will take your money and then
No, I just
you
want
can
a
have a
third
share.
of-
Yeah,
no.
To be honest, you essentially, by being my other half, have half the business. It would become that we had 2/3, and that seems unfair.
Yeah, all right. I'll settle for the half of the business that I apparently already have. Okay, cool.
That's only if you keep me sweet, though. If you,
Right.
yeah, that's not yours. That's yours by proxy.
Oh.
Right. Anyway, we should probably wrap that up there.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been fun. We will see you again tomorrow for day 84.
Jesus criminy.
Jesus H Christ on a bicycle.
Criminy.
Jiminy crikey.
Blimey, right. There's no shame in
Look at
liking
this.
or subscribing, so why not do both?
Do both.
Like and subscribe. There's
Like
no
and
shame in it,
subscribe.
guys.
Tell your friends.
Mm.